Okay, so before the break, we finished being able to load the staff from the CSV. So now the next step is to implement the same exact thing for the students. So just moving the Zoom thing. Okay. So here's my staff class, and here's my student class. Let's kind of, I guess, make them look the same because we want to do the same thing. So here, I need to create a function that will load the information I need from the CSV. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to refactor this initializer to use the keyword args like we did here. So I'm gonna remove all of this. For the initializer for the person class, I'm going to send in this information here. Name, age, role, and password. And then for student ID, I just need to do this. Oops.
Sorry, you mentioned this before, but I kind of forgot. What was the usage of none? Because I didn't have it, and
yeah, so none is just specifying what this function will return. This was included automatically when I started typing in my VS Code, like define init. So I wanted to define the initializer. I think it's an extension that I have. So if you hit enter, it will automatically do all the things for you. So if it automatically filled it out, but basically this means this is what this function will return. So that way when we're running it checks whether we are returning the correct thing or not. So yeah, so like in this function here, the load staff from CSV, it's supposed to return a list. So if I wanted to specify that, I would do this. No here, okay, here. So I do this and then I just put list.
gotcha.
Zainab, really quick, just the CSV file for the students calls it a school ID rather than a student ID.
Oh, thank you for that. That would have been a bug. That would have been something that we would have had to figure out.
That was a bug for me and Jeremy yesterday.
That happens because it's more intuitive to have it be student ID. Okay, so I updated the initializer. It looks pretty similar to this one. Just here, I'll change this to school ID as well, just so it matches. And yeah, I'm gonna also copy from here. It's usually better if you type it all out, but when you're coding, you're gonna end up copying and pasting a lot. So you need to get used to like making your changes if you do have changes to make. So here I have to make it all fit within the student context. So I want to change my variable name so they make sense. So load staff, it will be load students from CSV. This is going to be my student list. The file that I'm going to grab is going to be students.csv, right? Students.csv. Dictionary reader, I am not getting that yet. So from CSV, import dictionary reader. Okay, so for each row in the reader, we are going to create a new student. I can also do the find and replace method. So new student, oops. New student, replace all. And then for this one, it's going to be student list. So I can put that in there.
Okay. How did you do the find and replace method? Could you like, what are the steps to that?
So double click the word that you want to replace. And then do Command F or Control F if you're on Windows. and this top thing pops up with just like this, and you can expand it, and then this will be the new string that you want to replace. So like, let's say if I wanted to say new students, I would put whatever I need to replace it here, and then this is to replace all of them. This one is just to replace the next instance, so the first one and then the second one afterwards. So you can hit enter and it'll change one of them. Enter again, it'll change the second one.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, of course. Now I want to change them back, so I'm just gonna do that. Okay. So in theory, this should work because it's doing the same thing. If I wanted to test it out, first of all, we have to go to our school class because that's where it's supposed to be called from. So if I uncomment this, where is this coming from again? It's not staff, right? Student.
Student.
So student downloads students from CSV. CLS will come from the context of students. So when we're creating, it'll create a new student and not a staff. Awesome. So this will happen when we initialize, and then in our runner, we can do something similar to this. So I can copy this over. I don't want to print all of it. So this is going to be school.students. Again, in the class instance, we have students as a variable, and that is a list. So we're going to loop through it, and then we are going to print out the name. And there we go. We have the staff names and then the student names after that. Any questions about loading stuff from CSVs and reading the files? I wanted to demonstrate real quick that even if this file had txt at the end, it would still work because it has the same structure. So if I do this, I'm still looking for this file, so that's not correct. I have to go and say that this is .txt. And then if I run it, it still works. So the extension is merely for us as programmers to know, or the program that is processing the file to know how to process it. But when we're opening it, it's fine. It doesn't matter if it's a txt file or it's a CSV file, as long as we know how to process it ourselves. Okay.
So on a question on line 16 where we used dict reader to that method. So is that because we're trying to make it into a dictionary? But then I got kind of confused on the top where it looks like we're spreading it out and then we're kind of setting it up into a dictionary that way.
So no, so here it's spreading, it's allowing us to send in a dictionary into the initializer instead of having it like one variable at a time or one parameter at a time. So that's why this is helpful. But yeah, the dictionary reader itself is going to read everything line by line and parse it into what is it called? Parse it into dictionaries, with the keys being the first line's keys. So when you're setting up this reader here, there are a bunch of like flags and stuff that you can set. So if in my CSV file, instead of commas, it was, let's say like this, the bar. I've seen this before as well. So you would just have to go back to your reader here and then choose which delimiter. Delimiter means like what's separating the values, and you would say that this is my character that is separating, and it would do the same thing. So yeah, the only thing that understands how to read through a CSV file specifically is this dictionary reader because it's coming from this specific library that we have. Let me go back here. Okay, cool. Yeah, Dan, I agree. It's not very comma separated if you're not using commas to separate the values. But they still keep calling them comma separated, even if it's not an actual comma. The import dictionary reader throws an error when you try to print at the terminal. Oh, so instead of just import dictionary reader, you have to do from CSV import dictionary reader.
I also had to get rid of this dot, the CSV dot dict reader. Let's get rid of the CSV dot because you're not calling it from CSV anymore. It's
Yeah,
directly accessing it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, because this is a part of it. Okay, other questions?
Could you just, wait, could you just import CSV? Or do
Yeah.
you just want to take that specific one? This line 2 is just like, you specifically just want dictionary reader, you don't need the whole library.
Yeah, exactly. I just pulled the one function that I needed, or the one class that I needed within the entire library instead of pulling it all in. But you can import CSV. But yeah, that's it tends to be better to only import the things that you need. Will, great question. What is the PyCache folder? So when you're running your files, PyCache is a file or a folder that ends up putting I think like Python imports or like information. Let me see if it. Okay, yeah, it's like a binary, it's weird format. It's not human readable, but it's program readable, and I think I don't know exactly what it does, but it's basically used in the background for your program to run faster. So I think like when you have imports and stuff like that, it compresses everything into like a faster usable thing. So I can delete this and nothing will happen. And if I run my program again, it'll probably show up because I'm using a bunch of these. So yeah, typically you don't want to include this in your in GitHub just because it's not needed to run the program. So that's what we were talking about earlier with the .git ignore. So this is a file that Git understands, and anything that you put in here will be ignored by Git. So when you're trying to add and commit and stuff like that, that won't be tracked. So if I do PyCache __, it should get grayed out. That's weird. I just copy I think that copies the file, not the name. Yeah, we might need to put this or that. I don't know. It typically works. Okay, we'll review this later.
PyCache is in classes right now, so
Yeah, but it typically looks everywhere. That's the thing. Like you don't have to include the bottom folders, but you might have to here. Classes / PyCache. I don't know. It might also not be updating in real time. Oh, this is not tracked as a repository. There we go. Okay. So now, okay, that's the reason why it wasn't included. So if I just put PyCache here, it'll automatically look through the folders within the folders as well.
nice.
So yeah, so when it's grayed out, that means that Git is not going to be tracking it. When it's green, it means you've edited files or added, and then yellow is modified.
Where do we place that .git ignore? Does it have to be in like the same along the same path, and then like does it be within the same folder, or like how does it get positioned?
You can typically put it on like the biggest on the parent folder, like in whatever repository folder it is.
Mm-hmm.
On the repository level, you can put it. So instead of me putting it in this specific folder, this folder is within the demos and notes. So I should probably put it within demos and notes instead of here.
So it's like one level up.
Yeah, one level above this.
Above. Okay, yeah.
But if you have multiple git ignores, it's not an issue. It's just gonna, yeah. I don't think it's an issue. It might be. I'll have to consult GitHub or Git.
I think I catch on. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Notice that sometimes. Yeah, I haven't used that wolf extension. I would say don't rely on extensions, especially in the beginning of your career, because a lot of times you're not going to be able to use them in your programming environments. Not a lot of times, sometimes you end up at a company that doesn't allow certain extensions or certain things that you download from the internet. So yeah, okay. Yeah, I haven't used the Kuoka one yet, but it did seem pretty cool. Okay, let us get back into this. So we are moving along. We created both our staff and students from the CSV files, so that's good. Next step, print out the CLI prompt and give user option to choose one. Okay, so this will probably go in our runner. I'm going to remove all the print statements that we were using to test. So now we want to print our prompt. Do we have, let's see. I guess this I can copy. Does anyone have one that they would like us to use? Does anyone have like their own prompt that they've done?
Oh no, it said copy and paste. I'm never going to say no to that.
No one did anything fancy with this? Okay. So, okay, so I copied this over, but this is exactly like what's in here is the same as here. So I'm going to remove the print statement. But basically, we want to allow an input from the user, and then we give them an input, and then we're supposed to do what that input specifies. So what is something that we need here? If you're using a program and every time you selected to do something, it automatically quit, would you like that, or would you want it to keep prompting you until you quit?
Okay, prompting. So I could probably put it like in a, probably use a while loop, and then
Okay. So
if we select 5, then quit.
What would I say while?
We just did a while true, and then if you hit 5, you just did a break.
Yep, that's perfect. So one way that we can check for what the input is by what is it called? So our mode is what we're getting from the input. So we will have to check for what the mode is. So if mode equals 1, we do something. Elif mode equals 5. You said we're going to break, right? So we're going to break out of our loop.
Yeah, otherwise it'll be infinite.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a string though. Because like your input takes in a string.
Oh, yes, perfect. If I wanted to keep this as numbers, what can I do?
Int, you put int like use the int function on line 8.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, right there.
yes. So if you do this, that will cast the entire input or the input that the user will send in as an integer. This might cause an error if we're doing this, if a person returns something that's not an integer. So here, invalid literal for int. So you just have to be careful about that.
Well, you
So
could do like a try except thing, right?
exactly. If you wanted to make sure that you don't run into this, you can do try. Try except. And for this one, this is a value error. We don't have to, I mean, we can say except value error, and then if it's incorrect, if it doesn't work, basically, we can prompt the user. So let's say we're gonna have all of this inside of the loop because it makes it easier. So okay, so here we're trying to cast it as an integer. If that doesn't work, oh, I think I had one too many. Okay, cool. If that doesn't work, I can say, I can print out invalid input. Forgot this needs to be a string. So invalid input. Please enter a number or a valid number. I'm gonna close out these just so we can see the screen a little better. Okay. So we can try to grab an int. If it doesn't work, we'll say, please enter a value, and then we can continue. So let's see if that continues onto the loop and asks us again. So if we do this, I choose an invalid thing. It says invalid input, please enter a valid number, and then it continues to ask us again. So I think that's pretty good behavior. And then print. I'm gonna remove that. Okay. So this works. If I didn't want to do it this way, I could try to do to cast it after I get the input, so I don't have to do it on the same line if I didn't want to. But again, there might be an issue, so you might as well put it in a try catch anyways. Okay, so I personally don't like how this entire line is, so I'm going to define this outside. This is just a personal preference. I just want to show you that you can do these things. So I'm going to call this prompt. And to do a prompt that is, what is it called? That you can format like a multi-line prompt more easily, you can do the 3 quote marks. And then whatever you put in here, you can format the way you want. So I don't need to put this new line. I can actually put a new line and it'll show up the exact way I want it to. Even if I put like a tab, it should show up if I'm not mistaken. So let's test this out. Yeah, typically you don't want code to go off the screen. You don't want to have to use this. This is not optimal at all. So if I do this, and if I remove this entire, that's not what I done do. Oh my God, okay. And inside of the input, I'm just going to send in the prompt itself. Let me quit. So my quit button works, that's good. There we go. So it prints it out like this. You can modify the way it looks however you want, but yeah, I think this is pretty decent. So if I do this, it'll tell me that invalid input, and then I give it 5, it quits. Perfect. Okay, so we have 5 modes here. We have 1 and 5 considered. I'm just gonna keep adding the rest. So elif mode. Let's do. I'm just gonna have it pass for all of them right now, just because we don't. It's not part of our current task. Okay. Forgot this one needs to be an elif. 3 and then 4 and then 5. Okay, cool. Awesome. Am I forgetting anything? I think this is it. List students, view individual. Okay, cool. So let's see, we printed out the menu. Now we need to implement a few of these methods, right? Okay. So what did I press? Okay. For mode 1, we want to list all the students. So if we want to do this if we want to use like good practices with the usage of classes and stuff like that, you see up here, we instantiated our school. So actually we can keep it up there, it doesn't matter. We instantiated our school, and all the functions that are related to the school should be within that school class. So viewing a student, or listing all students, viewing a student, adding, and so on. This is all something that I should be able to access through school. I should not need to import the staff or the student classes at all. My main interface is the school class. So I need to create a few functions, right? So here, let's create our functions. What's the first one that we need here? We need to list all the students, right? So maybe get all students. This will also take self. And how am I gonna get all the students? What am I returning here?
Can you use the students from the classical on top of that? Okay.
Yeah. So that's where my students are held within my school. So I can just return students. Sorry, self.students. Okay, so we have a get students function, and that should work. Let's define the rest of them, and then we can implement them afterwards. So this one is view individual student. So our function should probably get what should I name this? It's a good convention.
Get specific
View
student.
Individual student, yeah, specifically.
Individual student, okay, specific student. We can do get student. We can have specific, that would be good. One other thing that we could do is say like get student by ID. Because that way we already know what we're supposed to send into the function just by looking at the function itself. So here it'll take in an ID, and then it will return something. So we need to implement
It
this.
also needs self.
Oh, yes, thank you. Keep forgetting that. Forgot how to spell today. Okay. Okay, we have the second function. Fine. Does anyone want to take over the keyboard and type and create these? Someone volunteer? No. Feel like you guys are falling asleep. You wanna know? And no one
I'm still following along otherwise.
following along.
As well.
Sorry?
I'm following along as well.
Yeah, I know
Yep,
it.
ditto.
Okay, so get student by ID, add student. This probably can just be called add student. Add student, this will take in self and something else. I don't know what it is right now, but we will implement this soon. And the last one is remove student. Okay. So can someone tell me why we didn't put this add student and remove student, like all of these inside the student class? I know they're related to the student, but why are we keeping it out here?
Encapsulation.
Encapsulation, okay. Tell me more.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you don't need to know what's going on with the student class. You just do it all through school. You don't need to know it exists.
Okay. You're getting closer, yeah.
The school is the one that's interacting with their students.
Yes, so the school is interacting with a list of students. So that means it will have context of all the students. It will be able to add a student to the list because it holds on to the list itself. It has the master list. It can remove a student. It could also get one by ID. Versus if we had the functions inside the student class, the student, the one instance of student will not know about all the other students. It will only know about itself. So that is why we would need to put it in the context of the overarching thing. All right. So, okay, so get all students, we are returning the list. Now we have to go back here and call all these functions based on these modes. So we created one for everything. So I can just call it by using the school instance. First one is get all students. This is a function. This one is going to be school dot, what was the second one? Get
Oh, yeah, get student by ID.
student by ID. I also like to separate these so they're not as crammed. School dot, this one is add student. And then for this one, school dot remove student. And then this one, remove student by ID. So maybe we should specify that here, remove student by ID. And I'm going to get the ID. Okay, for now, I'll just use whatever ID. ID, okay, cool. Okay, so right now, if we run this, if we run our first option, we should actually get our list. Oh, we're not doing anything with it. Okay, what should we do to actually display this? What do we need to do?
It's gonna be returned, I think. Oh,
It-
right.
Yeah, so it's going to be returned from this function call. But how should we actually display it to the users? So do I just print the student list?
Are you gonna need a dunder method?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's create a dunder method. So if I just print all the students like this, this is not that legible. Even if I looped through for a student in student list, print student, not static method. So let's see what this gives us real quick. Okay, so 1. Okay, so it prints out the objects. Like you said, we need to implement our dunder method. So I'm going to go into my student, no, not this one, student. Okay, and in here, I'm going to define my string dunder method. Okay. Again, this is the arrows just defining what is supposed to be returned. So when we're returning a string. This was automatically added. This is not what we want to return. So for a student, what information do you think we should add?
Probably name, age,
So I forgot to put this in here.
and maybe ID. I don't know if ID is important, like secure or not.
Yeah, this is supposed to be for like the principal or whatever. So I would say it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So name, age. That's going to be self.age. And ID. Let's do those. I think those are important. Self.school ID. Okay. So now because we added this, if I run this code again, and I view all the students, there we go. I get all the information in a more legible way. Great. That is the first function done. And we're just printing it like this. If we wanted to add anything else in there, we can format the printing in here if we wanted. But I think this is good. Which GUI is fancy? Is it this one? I just saw the chat.
Yeah, it's that one. It
Yeah.
reminds me of like what was that old like Windows 3.1 or whatever?
Oh, maybe, yeah. That's how all computers were. It was literally just an interface. And now we
It's
just
like 2 steps above DOS. It looks legit. I like it.
Yes. Okay. So let's do get student by ID. Let's implement that. Okay, so when someone enters 2, we need to grab the ID from them. So what do I need to do here?
Do another input.
So ID equals input. And this input, what am I saying here? Please enter the students, oops. Student, is it before or after? ID. There we go. Please enter the student's ID. We're grabbing the input. We want to make sure that it is valid. So I want to do this again. But I know I'm going to use it here, and I'm going to use it here, and most likely with the remove student, because I'm also grabbing the ID. So I'm going to say, let's move that into its own function. So I can create a function up here. I'm going to define turn or input string to int. Yeah, I think that's fine. And then I just give the value. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this. Oh, but then I'm thinking about the plus and minuses. Okay, instead of me trying to optimize immediately, I am just gonna add the same code in there, and then maybe later when we're done, we can optimize it. So I'm just gonna put a try around this. Oh, it's not attached to the 6. So if the person didn't put a valid ID, so this one needs an int, because that's what the IDs are. Please enter a valid ID number. Okay. Yeah, this should be fine. And then we send in the ID. Okay, so what happens if an error happens? We can come back to that later, but let me test it out real quick since we're here. So enter a student's ID. If I do this, okay, so it doesn't work, and then it goes back through the loop, and then we have to select it again. Maybe a fun thing to test out is whether is if you do run into that, you can stay within mode 2 and then do that. So that could be an option as well. But that, again, we're just optimizing here. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. For formatting sake, I'm gonna add a new line. Not here. I'm gonna add a new line after the input prompt, just so I can put my input on a new line. This is totally up to you guys, but I think it looks a little cleaner. Okay, so we're grabbing the ID, we're gonna call this function. And then after we call this function is supposed to return what to us?
Student name.
Student, yeah. So it'll return an entire student instance. And here we can actually print out the student when we receive it. Okay. So let's go back to, yeah, let's go in here into get student by ID inside of our school. And let's implement it. So we grab the ID. How should we look through this? How should we look through our students?
Look to the student list.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. So for S in self.students. I should probably call this student singular. And what am I checking for?
If the ID, the prompt ID equals the student ID. Or the
If-
school ID,
Yeah, if the ID that I got here equals the student ID. So if student dot school ID. I think this is what I called it, or how I spelled it. If this equals ID that we sent in, then that means we have found the student that we want and we will return the student. And then else. What should we return? Else, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna return nothing. And I'm going to print out saying what happened. So I'm gonna print out student not found. And then I'm gonna return nothing. So if you're expecting to return one type, don't return a different thing when you're going back. So like if I could have easily returned a string in here, right? Since this is going to print out the like whatever this function returns. But it's typically not great practice to have different things returning from a function. You should have it be like one thing that you're expecting. So we're gonna either return a student or return nothing. When we return nothing, we're gonna say student not found. I do like the suggestion of she doesn't even go here. That is great. Okay. So again, you have to run it every time you change your files. So we're gonna go to 2. I'm gonna give it an erroneous number, so it's an int, it's valid, but she doesn't even go here. And then it says none. So I don't like that it prints out none. So how can I edit this?
just return that phrase instead of the.
What is
Oh, wait, oh, I see what you're saying. It's printing the student.
Mhm. So if the student is not valid and I'm returning none, it's going to print none. So what can I do here?
I would just get rid of it because you're already calling it. Right? You're already going to return the student, right? In the prompt.
Yeah. So if we are returning the student, but if there is no student, we're returning nothing. So that means when it's trying
you
to
could just say like if student, then print student.
exactly.
Oh, okay.
If student.
Question, could you solve that in like the calling of it, right? Because you're gonna print, because right now you're doing a return on else, if none in the school.
Yeah.
You're returning nothing, right? So
Exactly.
you could return something else that then solves for that, right? Or am I off?
So you so we can return something, but why would we return something other than a student? Do you mean like return null or?
I was
What do
gonna say, if you return that statement, right? Because if you're returning this, oh wait, no,
This one here?
because you still have to print the student. Never mind. You're returning the student, and then you print the student later.
Yeah, so if I return this right here, this would have worked, right? If I didn't print this out
Sure,
here, and
sure,
return
sure.
this.
But it still returned the none. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
this.
So that one would print, it would be correct. But like I mentioned a little earlier, you're expecting this function to return a student. You don't want it to randomly return a string. I know this is not randomly, but you don't want to have like conflicting returns. It might cause issues or bugs later on. So this is the easiest way. You can check if student, which means if student exists, then you can just print. I can put this on a new line if I want to, but I'm going to choose not to this time. Okay, let's run this again. Oops. I have to run first. Student ID, so now if I put something wrong, she doesn't even go here. We don't see the weird none here anymore. Let's grab an actual student ID to see if our code works. So let's grab this one for Jessie. So I'm gonna input that. And I didn't get anything.
You had to press 2.
Well, you didn't select the menu. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. 2, and then here. It says she doesn't even go here. So something is happening here. What is the first thing that I should do when I'm getting something that is not correct? So this is technically a bug. How would we
Go to where it's breaking and then print it.
to find what? Sorry?
Go to where it's breaking and print it.
Yeah. So where do we think this is breaking? So our first step whenever we have a bug is to identify where exactly it's coming from. So here we just know. What is it?
I think it's breaking in the school date.
In school? Okay. So here we're grabbing the school ID. How do we know? So it's going into the else. That means it didn't match up the school ID to the student. So what can I do here to print it out or to
Print.
What am I printing?
Oh, you can print out the IDs,
Okay. So I'm gonna
and you should also print out the type of like what kind of
type of
data it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's good thinking. I could also just say this is ID, and then I can also print out the school ID that I'm trying to pull, because it might be an issue with that. So school ID. And then this one is going to be the same as this. Okay, so these are some good statements. Let's see if we get to it. What was the number again? Copy this. Okay, so the ID that we pulled is an int. The school ID is actually a string. So also there's another bug that I just found, but let's fix the first one. So we're actually pulling an int, but when we grabbed everything from the CSV, we didn't make sure to make it as an int. Everything is a string. So if we go back to the definition of what was it, student? So here when we're pulling the school ID, we don't check to make sure that it's an int. So what's something that I can do to solve this issue here?
Surround it with int, like wrap it with an int.
Okay, so we can make sure that this is wrapped with an int. If I know that I'm going to want to use school ID as an int in all of the places of my program, I might as well just put this when I'm initializing the student. So back in my student class, I can just put the int casting here. So that means every single time I create a new student, automatically the school ID is going to be an integer. I could also do the same thing for the staff employee ID, because I believe that one is, yeah, that one is also a number. So if I go into my staff class, I can also cast this as an integer. And then we have age that could probably be an integer. So I can go into my person class and cast age as an int here. So that way we only have to change these few little spots, but then it'll be usable throughout our entire program.
Is it just the default of like any kind of CSV reader, dict reader, or the regular one to just have it all be strings inputs?
Yeah, yeah. So it's yeah, because the file is just a file of strings and it will take everything as a string unless you specify otherwise. For sure. I want to show you guys actually something else that I'm not sure if we've shown you yet. How can I get out of this? Okay. I mean, I could have put 5 because we did implement that. But yeah, let's say I couldn't, like here we printed this out and it helped, and we were able to figure it out immediately that the types don't match. But what if we've been trying to debug for a while, this doesn't do anything for us. It doesn't make sense still. So built into VS Code, there's something called a debugger. So if you've ever noticed these like little red dots here, if you click here, you're setting something called a breakpoint. So this is where you want your code to stop and you want to inspect what is happening at that line of code when it's running. So let's say I want to set this breakpoint right here, like when the loop first starts, and that's it. Let's start there. So I go to run and debug right here. I'm going to go to my runner file because that's where I have to run it. If you start on any of the other files, it won't really work properly. So your runner file, run and debug, and then choose that it's a Python file. And it'll open a new file. This wasn't a breakpoint that I had set accidentally, but when my runner file was open, right, it's gonna start running line by line. It started at here, at this line, which initialized a school, which then went to here, and that's where it stopped. It stopped somewhere, let me see. Yeah, it stopped on this line in the student because I had accidentally put it there. But this is not what we care about. So to run to the, go to the next line, you can step over. So this button here to step to the next one. This continue is if you have another breakpoint after a while and you want to continue to that breakpoint or just continue running your program, you hit that. This will go into a function if you're at that definition. This will step out of a function. This is to rerun your file, so you don't have to keep pressing this button. And this one is to stop the debugger altogether. So let's say I don't want to inspect anything here. I still want to just inspect this line. I hit continue, and it's not going to actually trigger this until I go to that step, right? So I'm going to hit option 2. I want to put my student ID, which was going to copy this one. Okay. So we're at this, it stopped here. If you hover over some of the variables, it will tell you what the value is. And also here on the left side, you have access to what the values are. So ID here is this number. If I step into the next line, it goes into the loop. It runs it line by line. So right now we have access to the student in this singular loop iteration. So we see the first student that we have access to is this student with Lisa, and yeah, so all of this information here. And let's say we wanted to check that this one equals this. So we see inside student, now they match because we've changed it. Now this is an integer, but before we would have also been able to tell that this one was a string because it would have had the quote marks around it, and that this one is an integer because it doesn't. And that would have told us that there is the issue. So if I keep running, so this is the second issue that we had, is if I ran this code, I put a valid integer, both of them were integers, but it still went to this else statement. What did I do wrong here? So we figured out the other bug. The bug with, so let's say I grabbed Lisa's because I know that it compared Lisa's in the other one. So let's say I am going to use that ID. So it runs through, it actually compares it, it finds it, and then it's going to return it. So if I hit the play button, cool. It printed out that this person's called Lisa. What did I do? Why wasn't it catching the other student here? Can someone tell me?
Because your else statement is letting it escape out without going through the loop again for another student.
Exactly. So I didn't catch this until earlier. So you're looping through every student, you're checking the first student. If you don't find the first student, then it's automatically going to the else statement and saying that that person doesn't exist. So this should not be here. This should be, if we get to the end of the loop, so I need to unindent this a couple times. So if we get through the entire loop and we've never returned, that means the student was never in that list. So then we can print this and return nothing. So now if I restart my program, I'll choose 2. I will choose this person's ID. And then if I go back here, choose that. I don't want the breakpoint right now anymore, so I'm just gonna hit play. And there we go. It pulled the correct information. So I chose Dave and it printed out Dave. Great. Any questions about this? So I need to figure out why it was printing this other one, but it's probably. Oh no, this is the ID that I entered. I'm sorry. That was a stupid question. Okay. Questions? No. Okay, we have 15 minutes, so let's try to at least add a student. Okay. For adding a student, what do we need? So I'm going to stop this debugger.
We're essentially going to append the list. The new student. Given.
It's going to append a new student to.
Well, you're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
add it to the CSV and then.
Yeah, you're
rebuild
right. Right, it'll
of
right to the
this.
CSV.
Yeah. So for this one, let's say we don't want to add anything to the CSV. We just want to add the student while the program is running. We don't have to care about the CSV. So in that case, what do we have to do?
You can just append it then, yeah.
Yep, exactly. The CSV thing we can tackle later, but let's say we need, what information do we need? Name, age, role we can fill out ourselves because it's always the same. So we can put name, age, school ID, and password. So here, name, yeah, let's do just regular input. And I could say rename. And I'm going to do the same thing for rest. So name, age, ID. So this one is school ID. And password. Okay, and then role, we can say role is equal to student. Because that's how, because we're creating an actual student. We can set this later, but okay, so to add student, we need to accept the these values, we can do. There's a few ways we can do it. We can like accept the keyword args on the other side and set like put this all into a dictionary. If we didn't want to do that, we can just send in all the values as they are. So name, age, ID, password, and role. I do think this will, yeah, let's create a dictionary, because when we're in our student, it's gonna expect one. So it's just easier for us to create it up front. So in here, I can say, new student equals a dictionary, and then I can say new student at name. And I just want to make sure, yeah, so it's all on lowercase for here. So name will get put into that. This one is age. This one is school ID. This one is password. And the last one is role. So basically we're setting up everything in the beginning. All we have to do is send in the new student to add student, and we go into our school to modify this function. So in here, this is supposed to take a new student. And what do we need to do here?
Append to that list, but whatever is entered in. So the
Yeah,
student
so-
gets appended.
So are we appending the dictionary, or are we doing some, or are we appending something else? So we can do school dot, self dot students. This is the list dot append. What am I appending? New student as it is.
I forget. I think it.
What is the type of the objects inside of list? Are they regular dictionaries, or are they something else?
Should be a class.
Yeah, so this list is a list of student classes or student objects. So instead of just,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so instead of just saving a dictionary, we will have to save the new student itself. So I can do this on a separate line. I can do this within the same line here, but I have to invoke the student class. And then I need to instantiate a new student. Since all the information in here is just going to be sent to the constructor, and the constructor is expecting a dictionary because of the keyword args, everything should be set. We don't have to do anything else. So student, new student, it will append. Let's say it will return the student list, just so we can confirm that that the new student was added, basically. So here we are retrieving an updated student list. And then we can print it out. So print updated student list. Yeah, this is fine for now. I can actually just loop through it, but we'll see what happens here. So I'm not gonna run through the debugger. I'm just gonna go back to my other terminal. 2, not 2, that was wrong. Okay. 3, add a student. So I need name, someone, age, school ID 1 2 3 4, password 1 2 3 4. Okay. So student.init takes one positional argument, but two are given. What is happening? Let's see. So this is happening in the school. When we are calling the student. Student.init takes one positional argument, but two are given. Oh, so what did I forget here? So here, when we created the new class and we wanted to send in a dictionary, we did this. So what did I forget in
Did
school?
you forget the asterisks?
Exactly. I forgot the
'Cause
asterisk.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was expecting a positional argument. So when I do this, it's gonna send in keyword arguments. But when I sent it in by itself, I sent in a dictionary as a positional argument. So as a regular variable, or yeah, so it didn't understand what I was trying to send in. So if you ever get this issue, just check if you added the stars if you're using keyword arguments.
You always have to do that when you're sending in the classes, right? You have to deconstruct it.
Yeah, exactly. If you're using the keyword args with the construction of the class, yes.
Right.
Age of thing, school ID, password. Okay, so it gave us list of students. This is gibberish to me right now, so I'm going to do this. And I see that my last entry is the new student that I added. Okay. Awesome. So here I could probably print that one out better. So that's an optimization that we can make. Last one is to remove a student by ID. So to do that, we need to grab the ID. So I am going to copy this one over because this bit of code does exactly what I needed to do. It's going to grab the ID from the user. And if it's not an integer, then it says that it's wrong and that you need to input a valid number. Okay. So remove student by ID. When we're sending in the ID, we will go back in here. What can we do here?
We just need to go through the list of students until you find the ID.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to copy this over because this does the same thing. So it loops through the students. It finds the ID. And then here, we're not returning the student. What do we do here instead?
Remove it from the list.
Yeah. How do I remove something from a list?
I don't remember. At least delete or remove, one of those, I think.
Yeah, let's find out. So self dot students dot remove exists. So it's probably remove. Remove first occurrence of a value. So I'm gonna just say remove student.
Student, yeah.
And we'll see if that actually does it properly. And then we can return the student list. And then else, what is it called? We can print out. Couldn't find student. Okay. So remove student by ID. This returns updated student list. And then we can just loop through. So because I'm looping through, I might as well make a function later on when I'm refactoring to print out this, like a list of students for me, instead of me having to copy it here, and then also over here. Wait, I copied the wrong thing, sorry. It's this one. Okay, so for student in updated student list, print out student. That works. Okay, so what am I doing? Let's run the file. I'm gonna print out the students so I have access to the IDs. I'm gonna try to remove Dave. So remove a student, enter an ID. I do that.
No, don't remove me.
Sorry, too late. You've already been removed from the list. So now we see the updated list. We just go up a little bit. Now we have one less person, and we see that Dave is no longer in our list. All right, questions. I'm very surprised that we did that in like 5 minutes.
So if you exit out and then restart it again, will Dave will be back on that list, right?
Exactly. And why?
Because we're populating the list from the CSV files.
Exactly. So if we wanted to, we can extend maybe like we can add a function that updates the CSV file itself. And then you would have to use the CSV writer to append a line at the end that holds all the information that is needed. But yeah, that's a possibility. Also, if you noticed, our student and our person, our student and our staff, like this function is basically the exact same. So if we put this in, like we can keep this as it is, it's not that big of a deal. If we wanted to, we could probably put it in person and send in the file name, and that way we'll just like look for the file name based off of the file name that was entered, and then we just loop through that file name and create what needs to be created. But that actually might cause some other issues because we want to do student instead of, yeah, never mind, ignore what I said. But it can be refactored. I just need to think about it more. And I haven't fully thought about it. Okay.
You just gotta parse the CSVs into each other. And then you can pull from one CSV.
Parse the CSVs. What?
Saying based on the role, because you could based on role, right?
Oh yeah.
You could call the function, with an argument being either students or staff, and do like a string, literal to make the pathing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or actually, no. So when we add something to student, when we create a class based off of that, when it inherits the functions themselves. So because this is a class method, if I was in school and I just called staff.load from CSV versus student.load from CSV, assuming these are both from person, we would get the correct behavior because it is a class method that is taking the context of the class itself. So things kind of came full circle. It would actually work if you moved this code into person and then class, and then you just take a file name or something like that. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. Just have the file name be an argument in the function call, and it'll be fine.
Exactly, because since CLS is referring to the class, when we call it, you will be creating the correct type of objects in each scenario.
We found the reason for class method.
Woo! I like finding reasons for code.
Yeah, you can still do it without it. You got a question in the chat.
Don't crush my dreams.
Can we get this, Simon? Yeah, so this code, I'm gonna be pushing it to, the demos and notes repo. I will actually do it right now.
I have a quick question about the class method. I know actually, I'm pretty sure you answer these hundreds of times a day, but so when you said that you can move that into the person,
Mhm.
yeah, is the class method meaning that you refer to it by the class name dot and then the method?
Yes.
That's what sets it up like that. It's okay, but you could still do it by instance. Like you make, like instance dot and then the method, because the instance should still have access to that method.
Yes. Actually, I don't know how it'll behave when you put the class, when you make it a class method. So you might have to test it out to see. But if this was a regular method, then yes, you could access it with the instance. Even if it was a static method, you could also access it with the instance. But with a class method, I'm not sure of the behavior. It might do it properly, but I would be
Okay.
just test it out and make sure. Okay, so this is school interface. Interface, enter. Yeah. Any other questions? Great. Okay, so now it should be up here. So if you go to Tango Platoon, go to demos and notes, it's going to be in this folder here, the today's folder that I just updated, and all the code should be there. There we go. Oh, Dan, yeah, that's a good thing to like add, like your student was added if there wasn't any errors or something like that. Oh, without doing the work, taking early lunch. It's funny.
Oh, I was being a troll, sorry. Yeah, that was not how helpful you thought.
I also only read the first part of your comment. Okay, it is lunchtime, so I won't keep you guys much longer. Let me stop recording real quick.